guys. Um, so I wanted to do a real quick video because I've been meaning to do it. Um, and I wanted to do, uh, they're doing work on the apartment, so things are crazy here. I wanted to do a VR to Jasmyne Ambrosia's video on traditional witchcraft and ancestral work. I will put a link to the video in the description box. Because it all kind of ties in with Carrie and Amethyst Ascension's videos and workshops and all of this on Ancestral Work October. I have so many things going on with apartment work and all of that. So trying to get the pick a pile video. I'm missing a piece so that I can edit it on the computer. Because my phone doesn't have the thing. So either A, I'm just gonna have to re-edit the video and give you guys like a short and then do each video because they're like 20 minutes. And then you guys can just simply like go to the video that you resonate with. And do it that way. So that may be the other alternative that I do because I want to get that video out and that way I can get my stuff. I am planning a little field trip tomorrow. Hopefully. And I hope that you guys did enjoy some of the things on that I posted on the community tab about Greenbush Cemetery and a couple of the videos that I'm doing research on. At any rate, Jasmyne did make a lot of really good points, as well as Erie's Witchcraft. I'll put her video in the description as well as Carrie. I'll try to get Carrie's too when it comes to Ancestral Work October. But anyway, because we had to there's just too much going on here. But anyway, I did want to bring up a few points when it came to Jasmyne's video, when it comes to being a traditional witchcraft. And I am going to be I'm supposed to get it next week, 2 of the books that were recommended when it comes to the Ancestral Tarot and the Ancestral Grimoire. So I may be late when it comes to my ancestral work because there's just too much craziness. I didn't want this month, but that's what's going down. But anyway, when it comes to some of the things that Jasmyne brought up in her video, when it comes to ancestral healing and ancestral trauma, yes, we do need to be studying and learning about the land. And also, with my series, All This Dark in Indiana, which I was inspired to do through Sean and the boys at Paranormal Nightmares. And of course, Amethyst and Miss Kulala were like, yeah, because they have links to Indiana. Which is kind of why I've been doing the series when it comes to your ancestors of the land. We do talk a lot and work a lot when it comes to Louis. The trauma that our ancestors went through. But I do have to really agree that, hold on. Yeah, Rochelle. Oh, pets, it's like having toddlers. And of course, Jasmyne and Abby are starting their series on Circle City Witches. And I will try to link those videos too, either in the description or in my community tab. But as Jasmyne had talked about, when it comes to healing the traumas that that our ancestors went through, when it comes to, if you have ancestry from Ireland, we have the auxiliary schools, we have the Magdalen laundries, the mother and baby homes, especially the Tomb Ireland incident. When it comes to things that our ancestors dealt with, if you are of indigenous and there's just depending on your ancestry. But the thing though, I think that we need to keep in mind and that we need to be mindful of is that when we're doing all this is we need to be prepared for the skeletons in our own closets, because every family has it. So yeah, that's something that you need to prepare yourself for. Not only that, but when it comes to the ancestral healing, we need to really take a deep dive into traumas that our ancestors caused. Jasmine did kind of touch on some things when it came to things in Indiana. Um, what we did here to the indigenous, we even had residential schools in this state. What we did to the African American people. And there's some other videos that I've got coming out um, when it comes to some things concerning the history, because learning the history about your state, especially if, like on my dad's side, we've lived in Indiana for several generations. Um, and when it comes to that, learning the history of your state is very, very, very important. And again, be prepared. Uh, I'm learning a lot about the injustices that happened in our state, and me being naive, um, thinking that this state was open minded. And boy, have I gotten an education um, in the last few years. There's been some pretty grisly stuff that's happened in our state. But uh, it's so when it comes to doing that, yeah, you do making peace with your cemeteries or learning about your local cemeteries, because a lot of those people, they're forgotten. And just because they are no longer in this realm, their stories still need to be told. I have family that survived the potato famine, for example, who came here. And it's really a frustrating process when you keep coming up when it comes to brick walls. But again, with our state, there's a lot there. There's a lot there. Um, but we also, again, need to focus on the traumas that we've caused. Uh, and breaking those curses is also part of healing the traumas that our ancestors may have caused. When it comes to the whole thing with Appalachian conjure, and I'm not justifying, but when it comes to taking what serves you and what doesn't, with Appalachian conjure, to me, what you need to be doing is you need to be, and I do have, ancestry with Indigenous, with Scottish, with Irish, and that's a lot to do, and African American. So what I would be recommending that people do is getting books on Scottish witchcraft, um, Irish witch with Irish witchcraft. We need to be very mindful that some forms of Irish witchcraft would be cultural appropriation, because some practices they are closed practices, especially when you don't go to a person who was from Ireland and still living in Ireland. And Irish witchcraft and Celtic witchcraft are two different things. And there are some practices where it is closed because it's passed down from parent to child. So you need to be very mindful of what is and isn't considered closed. That's going to come down to your research. When it comes to cultural appropriation, it's different for everyone. There is a deck that I have that I don't use much, that US Games had done, and they just took from everything when it came to this particular Oracle deck. And I can't remember the name off the deck, and I don't have the box anymore. But I very, very seldom use the deck because of the cultural appropriation, as well as the fact that it's a little white book, and blind me and the little white book don't mix well. Um, but I just feel like those are some things that we need to keep in mind while we're doing this type of work, and doing the shadow work along with our ancestral work is critical, because then we can make peace with all of that. There may be situations and things when we talk with shadow work about patterns repeating. There may be patterns that have repeated for generations. So that's kind of why I always say be doing shadow work along with your ancestral work. Um, I started my process, and when I had to have hand surgery, you can't write with, hand surgery. Um, and then with my eye disease, it all the reading and such. So, but I do agree with a lot of what Jasmine said, and we need to be more mindful and do things with more reverence and respect, because then we're causing more trauma to our ancestors when we did that. So that's just me rambling on for a few minutes on my thoughts on the process, because I'm still, we're all going to be works in progress. But it was just some things that I felt like we needed to think about and be more mindful of, as we're doing the work and studying the history of where our ancestors came from, and the things that happened in the states that our ancestors lived in. I even found ancestors that lived in Massachusetts during the time of the witch trials. I have found ancestors in Louisiana, Virginia, and that's a whole nother thing. Um, and not to mention the fact that, as I had said before, a lot of people met a demise through a lot of wars, and there were a lot of wars in Indiana before it became a state. The Civil War, the Beaver War, the Revolutionary War. There was one again, the Beaver War. Um, but there were a lot of wars that were fought on Indiana soil before it became a state. So I even had a few ancestors that died during the Revolutionary War. I've had ancestors, the military has been very prominent in both sides of my family. So that's another thing, though, that you need to take into account. Don't just focus on the trauma that your ancestors went through, which is vital and it's important, but also focus on the trauma that your ancestors may have caused. What Jasmine said about find a grave, that is a means of going through and kind of doing ancestry work, and it doesn't really cost you anything, and connecting all that through ancestry.com. But you got to pay to get actual records, because there's a few things that I'm learning that just don't make sense. And they weren't exactly good at keeping records back then. Um, and in finding some of the history, there were even graveyards that have recently been exhumed that they didn't, because let's face it, we weren't good about keeping records in this state at one point. So, anyway, that's just my rambling on the subject. Um, Peace, love, and light, guys. Please like, comment, and subscribe.